Okay, cosmological argument then. So cosmological argument, as I said before, is obviously an a posteriori argument. This means that it's based upon observation or experience, and cosmological comes from the word cosmos, which means universe. So based upon our experience of the universe, we formulate an argument for God's existence. This means it can be based on anything, but it must be sense experience. Now, we've got Aquinas, who's our principal supporter of the cosmological argument. We've also got Copleston, but Copleston doesn't exactly come up with a new section. We look at Copleston with his radio debate with Russell, who's obviously the critic, and therefore the critic of Aquinas is good old Hume, who likes to have a bit of a bash at everything. Now, Aquinas then. Aquinas gives us 3 ways. Now ultimately he gives us 5 ways, but only the first 3 are cosmological. And these are called the ways, or sometimes it's called the proofs, and are contained in the Summa Theologica. Now the first way is that that we have the unmoved mover. Sometimes this is called the prime mover. We can see the influence of Aristotle. The second one is the uncaused causa, which is sometimes called the first cause argument. And the third one is the argument from contingency. And the argument from contingency is also called possibility and necessity. Aquinas does not name any of these 3 arguments. These are just ways that we've actually used latterly to help understand them. Now, we're above Copleston and Russell, right? Copleston and Russell there. So, the first way, the unmoved mover. The observation that it starts off with is motion, is change, and that's what we mean by movement here. Change. Everything changes. The second stage is that everything requires an exterior force. That's really significant. We don't use the word cause because it will confuse us with our second way. We require an exterior force. The third stage is that the exterior force which brings about the change can be linked back. And he then assumes that infinite regress is impossible, which means that we cannot go back forever, but says that there must be a first mover, and that this must be unmoved, because by the same logic, if the first mover was not unmoved, then it too must have been moved by something else, leaving us to the unmoved mover, which he says is God. So, he thinks that we require God, an unmoved mover, to ultimately explain movement, change, which again we can see the work of Aristotle here. The second way works in exactly the same way, but we take out movement and we put in cause and effect. Now, the examiners don't often like it, but we can talk about dominoes. If you might remember for the movement, you might have seen my pen rolling along the table. But the idea that everything, infinite regress impossible, must be an uncaused causa, same thing. It's exactly the same argument. The difference is a subtle difference, but it's based upon our observation. The observation of movement requiring force, i.e. things change, there must be a force that means that you are aging slowly. Secondly, that things have a particular effect linked to a causal event. Now many people find it difficult to separate them, and many people think they're the same. We're splitting hairs. And when Aquinas was coming up with his arguments, effectively, so it's a bit like a scattergun approach, or maybe a lacking approach. Maybe one argument in itself isn't the strongest, but when we have lots of different ones, and remember he's going to give us a moral and a teleological argument as well, he believes ultimately God exists. The third argument is different in nature though. The third argument is very similar to an ontological argument, but it's still based upon observation, because the observation is of a contingent existence. And his observation, then, the contingent means something that relies on something else for its existence, a physical thing. And he says, ultimately, if this, and this is where the possibility necessity comes in, if this is going to be possible, if a contingent existence is possible, a non-contingent being is necessary. Now, we do not observe a non-contingent being. We observe a contingent existence, which means that a non-contingent being must have started at all, and this is God. Now, rather than getting questions after each of them, any questions about Aquinas? Great. Great thing is going to come on. Hume. Now, Hume is a follower of empiricism, and we refer to him as a strict empiricist. So you might think, well, does he not just agree? Well, he doesn't agree because he believes this, that we can only know what we experience. And what can't we experience directly? God, or the cause of the universe. We can never observe the cause of the universe, so we can never know. So he fundamentally, from philosophical reasons, criticises it. We can never actually know with certainty. But he also criticises it in other ways as well. So what he suggests is, well, why is infinite regress impossible? Maybe it does go on forever. And he also suggests this. Maybe the universe is simply eternal. Infinite regress being impossible is a bit different from the universe being eternal. Infinite regress being impossible means, well, maybe it does just go on forever. It doesn't have a beginning. It can keep on going back. Eternal just means that it has no explanation. There is no answer. Some of his other criticisms, and there's plenty there, is similar effects from different causes. And he also says, why a complicated explanation for a simple answer? And he also suggests that
what does it say on similar effects? Why are?
from different causes.
Yeah, but what does it say? Why are?
Why a complicated explanation when we can have a simple one? We don't need to have the complicated one. Can you remember any more of Hume's criticisms?
Is one of them the Epicurus? Is that the
The Epicurean thesis is the idea of the infinite typewriters. Now, the infinite typewriters one would be more applicable for the teleological argument than the cosmological argument. Now, you can use it here, okay? But I wouldn't personally. I would be saving it for a teleological argument because it's particularly attacking the idea of apparent design. Okay? Yeah, that's the one I wanted to say. The problem is that the universe is unique, therefore we cannot apply what happens within to the whole. Do you understand that? So what he says is, just because within the universe there is apparently cause and effect, doesn't mean that it applies outside. Now I'm saving the last for now. So the most important one is about the very notion of cause and effect. Because what Hume says is, can we witness cause and effect? So this is a very philosophical term. I won't write any more notes because that's all you need on there, but just listen to me. He says that all we can see and witness is apparently two effects, and we make correlation. So we could be committing the fallacy of correlation, not causation. We confuse two similar effects to one being the cause. When you go to the doctor because something's ill, they might think, you've got a headache and you've also got a bad back, and there might be a link, but they might be not causal link, it might be a correlating link. There might be two effects of an underlying condition that we're not aware of that hasn't been diagnosed. We could make that mistake because he says we can never actually witness a cause, because philosophically, all you do is see two effects, and then you go, that must have caused that. You can never witness a cause, can you? It's not something that can be experienced. Can you witness the pen? Yes, you can witness a pen. Can you witness the pen lid being removed, me twisting it off? Yes. But at which point is the cause? You can't actually witness a cause, philosophically. So therefore, he's saying it doesn't make sense to say that there's a cause of the universe. You don't understand it, don't worry too much. But it's the main criticism, and it's very philosophical, it's something that you should be able to discuss. Any questions about that, or anything for you? Okay, now, the one thing that I hope really comes up, because it's dead easy, is the Copleston-Russell debate. Now we get up to the 20th century, and this is when they are on the radio, 1948, having their debates, and it can be summarised like this. Copleston uses Leibniz's principle of sufficient reason. And the principle of sufficient reason effectively says that everything within the universe has an explanation. There must be an explanation for everything that actually is. And using this, then the universe must have one. And for Copleston, Aquinas' answer is the best. And we have sufficient reason to accept this explanation. In response to this, Russell believes that it requires no explanation. And it requires no explanation because it is a brute fact. Because again, he's a strict empiricist who believes that when we don't know, we should be silent. And he refused to be drawn, leaving Copleston to say, if one refuses to sit at the chess table, on the table, one cannot be checkmated. And he was trying to goad Russell by saying, look, you're not taking part in the game, so how do you know who's got the best answer? Another thing for Russell, Russell says, just because the universe has a mother, just because I have a mother, does not mean the universe does.
I didn't get that. Yeah, I mean,
Who says that?
It's similar to this argument here about the universe being unique. Russell.
everyone does have a mother. That's weird.
But it doesn't mean that the world has one. So you can't take something within the world and then apply it to something else. So, do we know that you've got a mother? Yes, we do know you've got a mother. Can we experience that? Yeah. Parents' evening. But you can't say the universe has to have a mother just because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't work like that. Okay? The main way to criticise Russell, though, is with modern science, because he was attacking all cosmology. And a lot of science today is cosmological. The Big Bang, CERN, it's all about explaining the existence of the universe, how it exists. But they believe through computer simulation, through the Hadron Collider, that we can know. So they would criticise the idea of it being a brute fact. It neither having an explanation or requiring one. Any questions on that, or anything on the cosmological?
What was the bit about, where Copleston says, if you don't come to the table, you can't be checkmated? What was the thingy's response after that?
Well, it wasn't really a response. They sort of kept on going backwards. Russell was saying, well, look, if my point of view is that it's a brute fact, it has no explanation, well, I'm not going to provide you with an explanation because that's my whole argument.
Right.
Okay. Done.